Welcome back, everybody. This will be the third of our show and tell episodes where we quickly give you a brief little review of films we've seen recently. So, Matt, do you want to go first this week?
Sure. I caught something that I've been meaning to watch for a little while now. I caught a Norwegian movie, The King's Choice.
Oh, yes.
Which is actually about the invasion of Norway in April 1940. And how sort of the government struggled to decide on what actually to do in the face of this Nazi aggression.
Yeah.
And then it sort of tells the story of what King Haakon the Seventh did and his role in sort of making sure that Norway stayed in the fight, basically.
Right.
At that point, Norway was a constitutional monarchy, so he couldn't actually get involved in the politics.
Like we are now, sort of thing.
Exactly, yeah, just like Britain is now. So he couldn't get involved in the politics.
Yeah.
But his son was very much sort of like pushing to fight back, basically. And it shows that first like 72 hours of the war and all of the political wranglings. And it's a great performance from I think his name's Jesper Christensen,
right,
who plays King Haakon. And it just sets the scene really nicely in that it discusses how his brother, who is King of Denmark, is also facing the same issues.
Yeah.
And it shows the initial sort of invasion of Norway. So it shows the planes going overhead and, that no one knows what's going on. There's a belief within the Norwegian government that it's actually, it's not really going to happen. It's just, they're just wanting to like create a position in which to bargain.
It's like a feint sort of thing. Yeah.
And then I think on the night of April, the 8th or 9th, the German cruiser Blucher gets sunk in the entrance to Oslo. And it's a really like spectacular scene where it shows this fortress in Norway, and it just absolutely obliterates the Blucher as it passes down this fjord.
Yeah.
And from then on, it's sort of like the royal family basically flees north up through Norway, and it culminates with there's a little bit of a ground skirmish where the Norwegian forces are holding off the German paratroops.
Oh, that's cool.
Which is really cool. So you get some nice Krag Jorgensen action and some nice little scenes.
Beautiful.
But it shows really nicely like the human aspect of the king's family and his interrelationships with both his daughter and his son. Well, his daughter-in-law and his son.
Yeah.
Who very much wants to fight. And it basically comes down to the German envoy to Norway. He's trying. It's unusual in that it portrays him as trying to avoid unnecessary fighting and conflict.
Sure.
But what it does is it shows the envoy giving the king an ultimatum and saying, "We're going to put a government in power. You will remain king, but it will be a government led by Quisling, who is fascist, right wing chap."
Yeah.
Who'd been on the sort of like fringes of Norwegian politics for a while.
That's where the word Quisling comes from,
exactly.
Doesn't it? Yeah.
So they put Quisling in power, and it basically ruins the envoy's plans to avoid conflict.
Sure.
Because he knows that the king won't accept Quisling.
Yeah, of course.
And eventually, the king basically says, "I will abdicate if you decide to accept the German terms," and that's the king's choice. So he has to sort of like basically decide whether he's going to keep Norway possibly in a position where it's going to end up fighting a war with Germany. And then from there on, you have that whole situation where the French and British basically land troops, etc. But it's a really interesting film, and it's a nice companion piece to the Danish movie April 9th. You can watch the two together and sort of like get an idea of what it was like on those few days in April when the war sort of began.
Because I guess the early war period is something that has been covered in films, but not massively.
No.
So it's not always nice to find a movie that covers a completely different section of that initial blitzkrieg. So yeah, I mean, I've not seen it, but I know that you posted about it the other day on the Twitter.
And a lot of people said they enjoyed it too, which was
it got a lot of good feedback. So I'll definitely watch it. Any good Ali Tally in it? I mean, you mentioned the Craig Jorgensens.
Yeah, the Crags are really cool. So you don't see those very much. And interestingly, the only two movies that recently that prominently sort of like show Craig Jorgensens are April 9th and this movie, because they both the Danish army and the Norwegian army were armed with Craig Jorgensens. That's the main thing. It's not an Ali movie in that respect.
No, there's not. Yeah, that's fair enough then.
But it's an interesting movie.
Yeah, definitely one we'll have to cover later on in the pod, I think.
I think so. I think if you guys listening would like us to cover King's Choice in a full length episode, let us know at Fighting on Film. So that leaves us with, what have you been watching lately, Robbie?
Well, I caught Netflix's Mosul the other day.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if it was. I don't know if it was actually Netflix production, but it's on Netflix. And it's about a Iraqi SWAT team and their fight against ISIS in the dying embers of the fight against ISIS. They're mopping up Mosul. So the movie starts out where this young policeman they're like besieged in this bank where they've caught some ISIS fighters, and eventually the SWAT team come in and save them. And there's this really old SWAT member, like the leader, and he looks really like, he's very classic old vet.
Yeah, he's grizzled.
Grizzled man with, and they're sort of, they look a bit bedraggled, and they're taking ammo off the dead ISIS fighters, and they're taking boots off them and things. And, he picks up this really, really fucking Ali AK with, it's got an ACOG, it's got jungle mags, it's got a foregrip, a crane stock. Oh my gosh, this movie's, if you like AKs in this movie's for you, really. Yeah. So yeah, they eventually, they're on this mission, and it's like a fish out of water film, because they ask the young policeman to join them, and he does, and then you learn about them through him. So you learn, I won't ruin the plot, because I think the ending is actually really quite nice. The way that they do the ending.
Yeah, it's it's not what you expect.
No, it's not.
I've seen it myself, and although I've just ruined the plot of The King's Choice, I think anyone who's familiar with how World War II started probably knows what happened there. Yeah. But Mosul, I did catch Mosul myself, and it's really quite. I really enjoyed it. I was quite surprised.
Yeah, and it's in Arabic, so there are subtitles. But I didn't think the subtitles hindered it at any point. I really, you could feel from the atmosphere and the acting as well that you could get what was happening, even if there wasn't subtitles. But there's some really good, really well shot action scenes, some really nice sort of like scenes all about the morality of the war, and the morality of them fighting ISIS, and them having to stoop to the levels that ISIS have shown. And it also shows the chaos of Mosul as well. So you're not really sure where the front lines are. So you see a lot of different aspects of the war, and then you've got the whole. They mention how the Americans have sort of left their mark on Afghanistan. So, and how I grew up throwing rocks at American trucks. Now I'm driving one.
Yeah,
sort of thing. And it's all sort of, it's very rooted in the history of the area as well. So not only is it a good film, you learn a lot more about the region, and in a post sort of Afghan war, post coalition control narrative as well, which is quite rare. We don't see movies about those sort of countries dealing with their internal affairs.
I mean, how many movies have been made about Iraq and the whole insurgency after the war? It's there's so few,
and it's it's quite gun ho and stuff as well at times, and it's got nice choreographed action scenes.
There's some nicely shot action sequences, and the gun battles are actually quite realistic, in that they're worried about ammunition, and they don't show any of the weapons doing things that they probably wouldn't be capable of doing, and that kind of thing.
And there's also some quite touching and quite unsettling sequences with like really young fighters as well, and how the men treat the ISIS fighters no matter what age they are. That they're that everyone is portrayed fairly, I think, and it's anti-ISIS, but people are still shown as being people who are choosing like an ideal.
Yeah, it shows a human side to people, and
yeah, I think it says at one point that it's an ideal. It's like it's a way of life, not like how people are sort of thing. It's like that's how ISIS have sort of got control. That's how they're thinking, they're controlling how people think.
Yeah,
and all that. So it's actually quite deep. Anyway.
Yeah, there's not many films that try and tackle the whole ISIS post Iraq War situation, because I think it daunts a lot of people that want to try and to make a film about that. I think I seem to remember it was based on
as a New York Post article, I think, based on that, which is quite quite good to get a whole movie out of that little article, which was really nice. I liked it.
But I really enjoyed it. I did really enjoy it when I watched it a few months ago. I thought it was interesting in the very capable actors from the area, from Iraq, that were portraying,
because I think the main
situation.
He was quite a famous, well respected Iraqi actor. So, obviously they're not well known to our Western audiences, but to Iraqi audiences, they probably are quite well known. And it's also nice to see Netflix actually making movies about different conflicts as well. I hope they continue making more war films, because I think they're quite good at it, or they're good at commissioning them anyway. But yeah, if you've got Netflix, I definitely recommend it.
Yeah, it's well made. I would recommend it too. It's definitely, I think that's probably the most modern film we've ever discussed on Fighting on Film.
Very up to date. Very up to date. The Glock and AK aficionados out there will love this one.
Very true. Very true. Well, there you go, guys. If you've seen Mosul, let us know what you think. You can find us at Fighting on Film on Twitter through the hashtags Fighting on Film, or Bring Up the Podcast. You can let us know your thoughts on both of those movies, The King's Choice and Mosul. Completely miles apart, those two choices, which is a nice sort of contrast for this episode. So thanks again for listening.
Thanks again. Yeah, we'll catch you again.
Catch you next time.
Bye.